How is it possible, Mr. Foster, that you as an individual work out these theories when all the other assembly scientists have computers and all the money and government behind them, and yet they apparently can't? About the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not but a piece of rock, but it is.
According to the heliocentric model, during a lunar eclipse of shadow part we see on the moon is raised by shadow of the Earth, but that doesn't explain why from the point of view of the observer. The shadow part of the moon is on top, part of all the Earth is under the observer. This can be seen during a first quarter moon at sunset. Many times it has been seen during eclipses the sun and moon above the horizon, making an impossibility for Earth to be the shadow on the moon during an eclipse. The intensity of attraction of bodies on each other is affirmed to be proportional to bulk. They are, if they said, to be much larger than that of the moon's book, according to mainstream science. So how? Then is it possible for the moon, the mass of the moon being only 187th part of the Earth, able to lift up the water from the ocean and draw them towards herself? How can the lesser power overcome the greater power? Is affirmed that the intensity of attraction is decreases in proximity and vice versa, held in or the other waters being drawn up from their beds, of which of the greater distance from the center is diminished considerably. The maximum power of the moon is said to be at the meridian at any place. How often can the water of the ocean immediately underneath the moon flow towards the shores? A tide is a relative change of level between land and water. There is a constant and variable pressure of the atmosphere upon the surface of the Earth and all the waters of the sea, places upon which surround it. How can a round ball reflecting the sun not have a hot spot? How can something wrong reflect evenly across another round ball object? How can you walk on the moon if the sun reflecting or so intense that it can light up the Earth at night from 238,000 miles away? When light hits an object, it can either transmute the light, absorb it, or reflect it. The process takes place when that of gas molecules' initial high-energy electrons are induced. The gases that start a plasma reaction must already be free electrons and not bound to any one atom. Cold plasma contains reactive species, ions, excited atoms, photons, free radicals, gas atoms and molecules etc. In cold plasma, free radicals, gas atoms and molecules, etc. In cold plasma, the energy from the electrical power will be transferred to electrodes, and the high energy electrons will start subsequent chemical reactions that will result in different ions, excited atoms, free radicals. In the most rudimentary evaluation, this is the basic properties of the moon. Using a thermometer, the moon's light actually reads colder than the shade surrounding it. This means the moon is a self-luminous body. Like the moon's light upon a body of water, silver shines with the same luminosity as that of the luminosity of the moon. This aids in the natural phenomena of the basis for why wolves howl at the moon. Also why folklore from ancient times to earlier 20th century films where silver is a mirror to the soul, spiritual, told to reflect your innermost desires. Silver was always thought of as used to see oneself objectively. These instances of understanding of the basic but natural scientific essence of silver undoubtedly suffices for enough correlation between the silver and the moon. The formation and reaction interstitial alloy takes place when one element fills the holes of a metal lattice. These different types of elements not occupy the same sites. This we create the appearance of craters supposedly observed on the moon. This middle is most likely in relation to Mercury krypton. Would demonstrate the effects. Take note that in order for the compounds to stick they rely on air. Permittivity. This permeability shows signs of the lattice being that of or contained within itself a form magnetism. Moonrise and moonset. New moon. Moonrise is at sunrise and moonset is at sunset. First quarter moon. Moonrise is at your local noontime and its moonset is at midnight. Full moon has a moonrise at sunset and a moonset at sunrise. Third quarter moon. Moonrise is at local midnight and
moon sets at local noontime. The metal lattice contained within itself a ferromagnetic core. The major effect of cold plasma on substrates is due to reactive species and from radicals the free electrons. And high energy between the electrodes can contribute to the degradation of a chemical sphere. The reaction of reactive species within a simple is to subtract their own effect and assets the effect of UV light and high energy between the electrodes. A full moon occurs when the moon moves in the same direction as the sun, a slightly slower rate across the sky, lagging behind about 55 minutes behind the sun periodically. This occurs every 29.53 days, 12 hours and 44 minutes approximately. Your high energy species could cause some chemical reactions in the samples which could result in color change and liquid peroxidation. This has detected along with and short-lived species separately by placing your samples at different distances from the voltage source. Moreover, as light can change in the amount of voltage, medium gas rate, flow rate, relative humidity, substance physiochemical characteristics of convergence S of the reactive species. It is now suggested that the moon isn't a reflector of the sun's light but instead is self-luminous. That the moon is self-luminous can be observed during a first quarter moon at sunset. You can observe the light to part of the moon pointing up and away from the opposite angle of the sun's rays as the sun sets. Also, with that erasus, that is luminosity, is confined by one half of its surface, is sufficiently shown that during a new moon the circular outline, an entire circular outline of the whole of the moon, is often distinctly visible, but the darker outline it's always apparently less than segment which it illuminates. The moon is seeing many times in the solar eclipses that there's a great trepidation on around the body of the moon, which we can literally argue then atmosphere, the clouds formed around the moon, can be explained in the ionization of the moon's crystalline body. Plasma vaporizes and the steam vapors can almost always clear a hole in the clouds surrounding that of the light of the moon, and because of its ferromagnetic core, the ledger of magneticism is then flexed through the process of hysteresis, a lag of magnetic flux and pulse density due to the moon's magnetic field strength. The sun and moon are in a deep pool just like a magnetic connection. Michael Faraday came up with the relatively simple DC generator called a homopolar generator, a conducting radius, that is when an electrical force is put in motion rotating with angular velocity in a uniform field. The body's motion contrast making an electrical connection between the center of the wheel and the edge. The etching process of the looks of drone or of a polymer forms by an atmosphere pressure plasma jet, synergistic effects of charged particles, bombardment, chemical reaction, etching of reactive species and UV red sulfur. Through these effects that the changes of the periodical flux impulse to start this etching process recycles with thermal radiation causing and thermal radiation shadow. Thermal radiation travels in straight lines. When these lines are blocked by an object, it creates a shadow created by the great force of a nuclear reactor, i.e. the sun. This shadow is temporarily present at the region originally occupied at the time of the nuclear reaction. Approximately 6,585.3211 days, or 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours after one eclipse, the sun, Earth, and Moon return to about the same relative geometry, and a nearly identical eclipse occurs. These similar eclipses are part of the same Saros cycle, and the time between the two eclipses is called a Saros. The moon travels between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, and so if an observer is viewing the moon from outside of the Tropic of Capricorn, For example, would view an inverted image of the moon as compared to another observer's view from a location on the inside of the Tropic of Capricorn. Not at all because the false ideology that mistakes Earth shaped as a sphere in any way whatsoever, but is completely due to the observer's location causing a different orientation to the moon.